The purpose of CEPF's Safeguard Policy on Indigenous Peoples is to ensure that projects fully respect and support the rights of Indigenous peoples. The policy particularly focuses on rights related to land, territories, resources, cultural and spiritual heritage and values, traditional knowledge, resource management systems and practices, occupations and livelihoods, customary institutions, and overall well-being. This policy applies to all projects that affect Indigenous peoples, including where the grantee is an Indigenous peoples organization. If this policy applies to your project, you must assess potential impacts on Indigenous peoples as early as possible during project preparation. You must ensure that Indigenous peoples are able to participate effectively in assessing environmental and social risks and opportunities. You must also ensure that Indigenous peoples are able to engage in developing, implementing, and monitoring measures to manage any risks that are identified. You must also obtain free, prior, and informed consent from Indigenous peoples for project activities that may affect them. This consent must be obtained before the activities begin. Consent must be obtained through a community-level process in which the project activities are clearly explained in the local language or languages. It is important to ensure that decision-making is representative of all community members, especially those who have historically been left out, such as women, young people, and persons with disabilities. Indigenous Peoples Plan or Social Assessment. When you apply for a CPF grant, the CPF team will assign your project to one of three categories according to the proposed project's environmental and social risks. If your project is assigned to Category A in regard to the Indigenous Peoples Policy, you will be asked to prepare an Indigenous Peoples Plan. If your project is assigned to Category B, you will be asked to prepare a social assessment, which is similar to an Indigenous Peoples Plan, but with less detail. Templates and examples can be found on the CEPF website. If you are asked to prepare an Indigenous Peoples Plan or social assessment, you will first need to describe the Indigenous people living in the project area. You should identify potential risks with the participation of the affected Indigenous peoples. You will then need to describe any potential adverse impacts that are identified. Next, you will need to set out measures to manage adverse impacts. These measures should be developed through meaningful consultations with the affected Indigenous peoples' communities in a culturally appropriate manner. If Indigenous people are entitled to receive benefits from the project, you will need to describe how you will ensure that they are culturally appropriate and agreed upon through meaningful consultations.